Well, hello folks, I'm LA Little and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets and we do it from a neoclassical perspective. Each time we ask ourselves what happened today and what does it tell us about the coming days. I do this show 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time and archived on YouTube. Available there. If you miss me, the channel's LA Little. It's always available on your your iPod, whatever. I mean, it's available on any platform essentially. So catch me there if you don't catch me here. Matter of fact, we're going to be moving to that medium fairly exclusively in the not too distant future. As far as what happened today, well, more of the same really. We had the Dow down about 26, S&P's lost 6, so the weakness was here, but where else but in the OTCs are you expecting strength? That's where it was, that's where it stayed. We're going to dive into that a little bit deeper tonight because I think we're going to see a change there. And the dollar, amazingly strong one more time. I mean, currencies are getting crushed pretty much right across the board when compared to the dollar. Dollar is beating everything now. And dollar is making a beeline to the next swing point high on the weekly time frame. What's interesting about it is as those currencies keep going down, in other words, the Canadian dollar, the British pound, just go down the list, the Aussie, they're all getting crushed, yet those markets are not moving up anymore. That's a difference. That's something we haven't seen in a while. It's a little bit early to call it a trend, but it's definitely something that we have to keep our eye on because it seems to me to be suggesting something a little bit larger might be taking place here. And I've been wondering when this currency deal was going to start to make itself known, and I'm wondering if we're getting close to it now. What I mean by make itself known is you start to see the effects of it. So far those effects are muted at best, almost no effect. But that's a change where you can't see currency devaluations against the dollar pushing up these other markets relative to the dollar or relative to the US markets. That something to watch, something to watch. Elsewhere, gold, silver, commodities in general push down again. Oil down 0.5%, silver down almost a full percent, gold down a full percent. Commodities in the bread basket, the DBA down 1%, all the grains. You had weakness in the bonds again for the most part. You had weakness across most of the bonds like junk bonds, municipals, the high quality corporate debt, all of those getting hit. I mentioned last night negative interest rates in France on the short-term notes. In Ireland, we've already had negative interest rates introduced by the ECB to banks on overnight lending. It's a crazy world, folks, and it seems to be getting stranger. All right, let's look at these indexes now that we've kind of broken the ice here and see what we have happening. So let's start with the S&P 500. And we've got about 10 days of hang now. So if you start here on the 25th, go across, pretty much hanging there at those levels, hasn't changed at all with respect to that. And that, how do I want to say it? That to me has become the range trade that when it breaks, it's going to lead to one side or the other, probably about equidistant. So my take is if we head down, we're gonna shoot for this bar. If we head up, we're gonna head for the highs of a 21-point range breakout over the top. That's really in a nutshell what's going on. If we look at any of these indexes, they all pretty much say the same thing with the exception of one, and that's the NDX. So let's look at it next. NDX today, again, you still got that same range. August 25th is when it started. NDX today, though, got to the highs, 4105.50, which got you over that prior high from September 3rd. So you go over it, back under it, that's a test failure, you got less volume. NDX wants to come down tomorrow. Now that's important if you think about it in the context of what is happening tomorrow. You know, the much heralded Apple news is tomorrow. They've got their, you know, unveiling of their new products. Apple has set up a potential ABCD structure to the downside, and you're going to get volume tomorrow. If this thing breaks, it's another 5% to the downside. Apple could take itself down, and let me see, I got the numbers over here somewhere. I was looking at them earlier. That downside projection is 93.69, so it takes you down into this area. And where is that? Well, that's back underneath this swing, not the swing point low, but it's back underneath this high volume bar on the way up. It's the last one on the short-term time frame. So that's going to be what I would be watching tomorrow. The fact that the NDX is saying I want to go lower, and the fact that Apple's set up to try to break, and to break at the tune of probably about 5% if it breaks, is definitely something worth watching. Now, on the other side of that, and this was the other interesting piece of it, is if you walk over to the other heavily weighted stocks, you've got Google actually going the opposite direction. Google has ABCD structures on the upside, and so, you know, if you look at those numbers, on the daily here, let me get this. There. So if you look at it on the daily, and it's from here, so you got an ABCD structure here. That one takes you up to about 606, which is almost the highs. That's on the daily, and that one's in motion trying to get there, and the volume buildup is, you know, it's okay. It's nothing special, but it's okay. Trying to get up to this high. Matter of fact, that is the bar it's trying to get to. That's on the daily. If you look at it on the weekly, you know, on the weekly, you've got a nice ABCD structure. Matter of fact, you got two ABCD structures happening here on the weekly. You have one projecting up from here. That one gets you up to about 618, so that one would get you slightly over the highs. And then if you look inside there, you got another one, and we'll just draw it in from here. You got another one from there up, and that one gets you up even higher. That's 1631 if that one actually takes place, and that would take place if it breaks over this high. So Google, not the same weighting as Apple, but a fairly decent size weighting. But if you combine with it the other of the big three, which is Microsoft, then you actually have the same equal weighting as Apple. And Microsoft has an ABCD structure in place. It's already broken out. This one takes it, you know, it's kind of a prolonged one. This one doesn't take it up all that much farther, but that's another, let me see here, 46. Actually, that one, 1, 2, 3, yeah, that one's already taken place. There's another one, let me redraw it here. There's another one taking place here off of this high. Right, if we take it from there and draw that one out, and you have a potential, you know, an ABCD structure gets you quite a bit higher here. On the weekly, you also have another one in place. And so the point is that even though Apple wants to come back, you've got Microsoft and Google looking like they want to go the opposite direction and potentially canceling out the negative effect of Apple. So tomorrow, the question will be not so much does Apple break, it looks like it's going to try. It's going to be, do the others go with it, or do they maintain their bullish bias and keep trying to move higher? If you look at most of the sectors aren't telling us much. Most of those still look bullish. Let me pop over to the sectors right quick. I think there's only like, well, actually the XLE is the only one that's really trying to break down. Elsewhere, so the XLE is going after the lows. ExxonMobil's about ready to break down itself. Inside this group, you actually still have highs on the SOX, on the XLB, and these are either at highs or hanging at highs. XLF, down the list, XLP, the XLV, the XLY. So you still have plenty of bullish sectors on the U.S. domestic markets. So that isn't telling us any kind of a heavy pullback. Yeah, a little pressure on the XLE today was actually pulling things down, and that was the big loss for the most part in the S&P 500 today. If we walk overseas and look at some of this, you got EEM coming off, which will kind of segue into the overseas indexes themselves. Gold breaks down, gets up underneath that low, looking pretty tough there on gold so far. Copper actually up today, but as I was talking about earlier, all of your bond issues keep coming down. Here's the high quality corporate bonds. The junk bonds seeing the same sort of behavior, just bleeding back down to the backside. Municipal bonds looks like they're going to try to break. We've already looked at all of the retest regens that were bullish on the various bonds. The government treasuries all breaking down and not holding, so that puts them all in range trades at best. So you got no place to go in the bond markets. Overseas markets, other than Europe actually, of all places, are not trying to go up. And they're all kind of hanging or either drifting back down. But the most important thing there is what I was saying earlier, and that is the currency devaluations aren't helping those markets now, which typically has been the case. Every time Japan would devalue its currency, boom, stock market would go up. Same thing in Canada, the same thing in Britain, the same thing everywhere, right? Same in China, it's the same thing, right? All across the board. Now with the dollar up against everything, we're not seeing that same structure take place. Talking about the dollar, take a look at this move up. I mean, that is a power move to the upside. Here's the weekly, just broke out over the top. And if you pull it over and look at it on the monthly, it's going after the swing point highs on the monthly now. So, it doesn't look big here, but as you see on the dailies, it's a fast, heavy move to the upside, and a large part of that is the total destruction of the FXE that's taking place as a result of QE in Europe. So when you look at all of that and you think about it, why aren't those markets moving up? Well, let's go look at those markets real quick and kind of wrap up the summary, the intro summary, the 15-minute intro summary. I try to reduce to 15 minutes, and let's pop in there at the world market. So Europe, we were just talking about, that devaluation has led to a nice spike up. Part of that is also the fact that the Ukrainian situation is not front page anymore. Little drift off on the CACs, but the CACs now looks like it's going to try to attack this almost this high up here, about 45.74. Nice big ABCD structure is in place. I didn't do the numbers on it, but what is that? 42.16. That's about 200. 45.37 gets you almost there. So that looks to be what that one's going to try to do. If I look at the DAX also hanging up there, going after the swing point highs. It has a retest regen off this swing point low still. It hasn't finished, and it certainly hasn't gotten over yet. That's the next test for it, which happens to be that swing point high as well. So we'll see if it can get over it, but that's the big test now. It also has an ABCD structure in place. And then if I go over to the British market, which has its own little problem now with the Scottish secession vote that's coming up in about a week and a half. They traded down, volume expands, not enough to hold it. It hammer reversals off of it. Probably going to head a little bit higher tomorrow, but I suspect this is going to get volatile in a big range up here, with some big moves up and down as that vote comes closer to fruition. So that's going to be a market that's kind of off to itself for a while. But what I was talking about earlier is those other devaluations, they're coming off their highs. So the Canadian market, Toronto, coming back into a swing point high, doing a retest, regen bullish. We'll see if it can hold. If you look at Australia, which is also devaluing, doesn't hold the bullish retest, regen, breaks. That one just finished off an ABCD structure, could get a little bounce, but why aren't we seeing these go to new highs? If we look at Brazil, comes off the highs, power pushed to the downside now. If you look at, well, actually the Nikkei is holding pretty well, And but if you look at some of the others like Taipei and those have been doing tough. The ones that are still holding Nikkei in Asia, that is Nikkei, the Hang Seng, the 8 shares, and the Hang Seng itself in Hong Kong. So a little bit of a mixed picture now in Asia. It's not nearly as strong as it was. The thing that's really got me looking is these currency devaluations and the fact that they're not pushing these markets up like they have. I mean, it was automatic before, and now it's not. So we'll keep an eye on that and see if that matters. So in terms of the wrap summary, IndieX, Apple tomorrow, that's going to be the story. IndieX is saying we're going to try to go lower. Apple's also probably going to try to do the same thing. It's got that ABCD structure that's bearish, but we may see that countered by the two strong ones in the big three, and the fact that the SOX is still at the highs, although the SOX is almost done with its ABCD structure as well. So it's getting a little bit more dicey up here. Still in 11, 9-10 day range. Tomorrow the big news will be Apple. We'll see how it plays out. Usually it gets sold off on the news. Okay, I wanted to pop in and actually let me take questions first. I see one up here, so let me pop into that first. If you have questions, you know, I'd be happy to take them. You can text me 303-912-9110. I'd be happy to take that question. Just give me a direction, a time frame, you know, what you're trying to do in a time frame to help me. Support at tatoday.com, and I'll take it there as well. Let's see what we got here. XLE has been hit pretty hard. Are we near support here for this index, even with the currency dislocations? Well, actually, let's do it together. Let's pop over to the XLE and let's see what that looks like, because I haven't tried to calculate any kind of ABCD structures or anything off of it, but we can pop in pretty easy here. And I'm going to pop in, you know, for members, I have a weighting structure here set up for them that they can come in and see. So if I come into the watch list as a member, you can pop in here, and one of the things you have is the XLE as a watch list with all the currency, with all the weightings inside there to make it easy to see, you know, what this is, along with all the details of those various stocks that are inside that. So if we pop into that and we look and see what those heavy weightings are, of course the big one is ExxonMobil. So let's just look at a few of these and see what they look like. So ExxonMobil's the first one, and this was the one I was looking at earlier. It looks like it's going to fix a break here. So if it does break, this is an ABCD structure on the downside, right? That price point is from here. That low is there. You got to push up to there. You can see the size of that move. It's pretty big. It looks like it's about, it looks like about 7 points. 7 points off of this number takes you to what? That number is 100, so it takes you to 93. So if we pop over and look at the weekly on it, 93 takes you into here, which is almost, that would be the target. The target's 92.31. So of course it's got to get under this big bar. That's the last big support. But yeah, ExxonMobil looks like it's going to break, and if we go back to the weighting on it, ExxonMobil is 15%, almost 16% of that index. Let's take the next highest, which is CVX. Let's see what that one looks like. It looks almost the same, doesn't it? You've got almost the same structure here. It's not nearly as far along, but you've got the same breakdown that's trying to take place, and that's from here down, right? And that one, if you measure it out, if it does break 135.10, you got a low of 127. That's about seven points again off of this. Takes you down to about 122.20 or so. So 122.20. If I pop over to the weekly, 122.20 gets me into this big bar. So actually it'd take you right into it, almost that swing point low. So, you know, just looking at the top two weighting structures, CVX is 12.89. So you got 12.89, and what was the other one? 16. 12, that's, what is that, 36, 37%, over a third of the index in those two, and both of them look bearish. So that doesn't give me a warm fuzzy feeling. Let's look at the XLE itself. Let's see what it looks like. And okay, so this one not quite as bad. You've also got an ABCD structure here. The top is 109, 101 basically to 94.5. So that's 6.5 off the top. That takes you down to 92.30 or so. And if we look at the weekly on it, 92.30 gets you into this bar. So if you're looking for a place to buy these little babies, this looks to be the spot. 92.30 is right at the bottom of the support zone that the TA Today charts have drawn in for you. Right at the top of this bar. That's where it's trying to head. So if you're wanting to buy it, you want to wait until it gets there. That seems to be the spot. Okay, let's see what else we got here. So if I pop over, I wanted to look at the last two weighting structures that are big in the NDX and just share that with you here. So let's pop over to those and see what they look like. So IBB is about 13, I think it was 13% of the weighting. So let's pull up the IBB, see what it looks like. And let me pull back over here and grab that. Okay, so IBB was up today, and so these look pretty bullish, right? Now you did have volume come down when it hammer reversal, and it tested into this bar and didn't have the volume. So IBB actually looks like it wants to try to head higher as well. And let me see, so that structure would be 1, 2, 3. So the ABCD structure here is from there to there, down and up. And that looks to be about, you see what the numbers are. 247, 260, 68. Yeah, 268.60. So it gives you about 21, and that gets you about 285 or so. That's about what, 2.5%, 285. So that's an ABCD structure to the upside. And let me see what the weekly looks like. Now the weekly actually just tested the highs. So that high was 275.40. You did 8.4 there. Oh, that's interesting. So look at this. So we have a structure that takes us up 2% higher, 2.5% higher. 2.5% higher, and you've already seen a test failure at the highs. Now, a test failure, it did break out here. See the green bar here? It did break out. So this is a retest regenerate taking place on a weekly. So in other words, it can test down to the lows, and usually if you come back within 6 bars, it will try to. The low on this is 261. It got as low as 265. So it got a pretty good test of the lows. Didn't have the volume. That was last week. So you're coming back up to try to break it out. So this is a key, I didn't know this, but this is a key index because this one's setting up to try to break out higher. And I'm going to pull it back and look at the monthly. The monthly would be a huge ABCD, and look at the volume left at the bottom on this. That tells me it's going to come back down there at some point. That's a problem at some point, but that's not now. So let's go back to the daily. And that high was 278, and that weekly, I mean that daily would get it to 285, right? So that would be over the highs, and that would be a decent breakout. So this it looks like Apple's on its own, right? Because so far Apple wants to go down. Microsoft, Google want to go up. IBB looks like it wants to go up. And let's quickly check the SOX, see what that wants to do. So let me pop back over and grab the SOX. And because that's the other heavy weighting in the NDX. Those three and these two, in other words, those three big caps, IBB, SOX, they account for 2/3 of the NDX 100. And so that's why I'm looking at them. All right, so you get over the highs, you stay over the highs, you had a breakout confirmed, you have an ABCD structure in place. So this ABCD structure goes from this bar to here, down, and back up. Let's see what those numbers are. You got a low of 82.5, 87.5 roughly. Tack that on to 86.5, gets you about 92 maybe. So that's about maybe 2.5% higher. So another 2.5 here. Let's see what the weekly looks like. And what I'm doing is what I always do. And if you don't do this, this is probably something you should think about doing. And that is figure out what your weighting structures are. Figure out what it looks like, right, in terms of how far this thing can or can't move. And then use that to make your projections, which will help you to know which sides of the trades to be on. You got another ABCD structure here. You're just ballparking it. It looks like about 5 or 6% higher on the weekly. And let me see what the monthly looks like. And on the monthly, well, the monthly comes from here, from right here to there and up. And that's done. That's already finished. So on a monthly you're done. On the weekly you got maybe another 5%. On the daily it looks like maybe another 2.5%. So take all that together. I don't think the index is going to go too far to the downside unless, and again, unless you get the sympathy trade. Apple sells off hard and fast, you'll probably get sympathy trade. That would probably get you some sort of a faster move down on the index, which actually probably could be bought. So going back, let's wrap this up and look at the NDX one more time and consider where would you buy it if you get that kind of a situation. So let's see here. So the bottom is 40.51. All right, so there's two things that stand out. One is this little 9-day, it's about 10 days here, right? That little area there. And then of course the other one is because it broke out here, you have a retest, regenerate, bullish retest, regenerate. That is your ideal buy on the first trip back because you're way over 6 bars. So the ideal spot you'd love to see this thing come crashing down to would be about 4,000. That would be the ideal buy. Well, of course, tonight we're sitting up here at 40, almost 41, 40.95, 95 points down. Yeah, nobody would want to buy that. It'd be the ideal spot. All right, folks, that's it for tonight. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. You tell a friend, tell two. I'm LA. This is, and it was, your daily NeoTA wrap. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night, folks.